a minute or so. Oh, there's a great still image of me going like cut during your previous one, which
good.
It's the one I use for every event, so you can just see it. It's just there every time. It's amazing. Hello, Jos.
Hey, everyone. Jos almost like needs to come onto the stream at some point because he's such a regular at this point to everything that we do. It's great. So I'm trying really hard. I'm going to try really hard to be a lot more quiet during this team talk. I want to listen and learn. Like I'll do our team catch-up stuff, but for the rest of it, I'm going to like test myself and ask questions more than pontificate on stuff.
You know what's hilarious? I actually have a timer. I don't use it for this, but I use it specifically when I'm working with one of my co-designers, Banana, who I've been told I talk over all the time because she's quiet and thoughtful, and I'm a think out loud person. And so I literally have a timer on my phone that I hit when I talk, and I take my hand off when I'm not talking. And at the end, I look at the stats and see, did I really talk more than she did? And invariably, it's yes, I did. But it's this thing that keeps me mindful of not talking over her. In our own design sessions, it's fine because that's how we work. But when we do our podcasting together, it's very much I have to be mindful to not dominate, right? So I get where you're coming from.
Interesting. An interesting strategy as well to kind of not only see the issue, but find a constructive, creative way of avoiding it, let's say. I think that's really interesting.
I don't think she knows I do it.
Well,
I don't think
might now.
She might now, yeah.
Actually, it's just on this note, I did a lot of creativity facilitation training before, and one of the things, the tips they used to have is in a group session where someone kind of like, hogged the conversation, you would just do this, and if enough people did it, it was an invitation to the person to refocus, or basically like, kind of go, okay, I've gone off topic, someone take over. And it would just like one person would just kind of do this, and then other people would do it, and the person very quickly got back on topic.
That's nice.
You're not putting across them. It's just
I'm gonna implement it into our meetings in the morning.
Elementary school teachers have a much more in-your-face method of doing it. So elementary school teachers will start clapping, and then all the students who notice will clap until the ones who are like talking and with each other go, oh, us too. And now that everybody's clapping, now we can start class.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
Awkward. It's good,
it's awkward, but it's like, okay.
Well,
it's interesting.
Yeah, they do that here, but it's like just 3 claps, and you just go, and then every kid
it's constant clapping until everybody is clapping.
Cool.
Right? It's that kind of thing that, we're all attending, we're paying attention. All right, class, we're ready to learn. Now that I see everybody's doing the same thing, we're all on the same page. Let's get the learning started. Just another method.
And on that note, I think, Corina, we should kind of officially kick off tonight's team talk.
I think that's a good call. That's definitely a good call. So, of course, we still don't have Aaron and Michael because, as we've established, we've killed them. But they're going to be resurrected next week, so they will reappear. And in the meantime, we thought, let's have a good, nice evening, a good topic, an interesting topic, hopefully, for everyone involved. So we have a couple of special guests whom I'm going to invite, starting with Anjuli, if you want to introduce yourself and kind of tell us about all the amazing things you do on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, I do so many amazing things on a day-to-day basis. Hey, everyone. I'm Anjuli, Geek Girl Bookworm online everywhere. I am the marketing and publicity manager for Aconyte Books, which is an imprint of Asmodee Entertainment. We create tie-in novels based on your favorite board games, card games, RPGs. First books are coming out in September in the US and October in the UK. Wrath of Nakai, which is Arkham Horror, and Tales from the Crucible, which is Keyforge based. In my free time, when I'm not marketing the books, as I'm doing right now, I am playing RPGs. I am painting miniatures. I am having very loud discussions on Twitter with people about inclusivity in especially wargaming, and the use of some sculpts in wargaming which are inappropriate and outdated. That's my main things. Yeah, I also hang out and drink gin, sometimes with Corina. And yeah, that's pretty much. I watch Netflix, all the Netflix.
All the Netflix.
Yeah.
Yes, Netflix is good, and Disney Plus, right? Yeah, I know. Disney Plus. We watched the Moana together on Sunday and drank gin. It was perfect. It was good. It was a good evening.
Cool. So, well, I'm kind of really excited to have you here as well. I'm not very opinionated, actually. I tend to see both sides. I'm kind of really curious to have conversations with people who are super opinionated, and to kind of learn from that as well. Because sometimes it's about like learning to step up a little bit more. And I've kind of educated myself recently on a couple of things that have enabled me to be a bit more vocal, because I can point to that thing that says that's right. So yeah, I'm kind of really excited for tonight's conversation. But again, I'm talking. So Sen-Foong.
Hey, my name is Sen-Foong Lim. I'm a board card RPG designer. So anything in tabletop space, I will design something for you. I am extensively employed in the work of like intellectual properties. So I do a lot of work for Warner Brothers properties, Dungeons and Dragons, all sorts of stuff. So I have several board games, several RPGs. My latest project that's coming out on Kickstarter this July is a passion project that I did with my co-designer Banana Chan about running a Chinese restaurant in the 1920s in America or Canada as an immigrant family and fighting vampires. So that's my next project, which is Jiangshi Blood in the Banquet Hall. I am a psychology professor, a therapist, and martial arts instructor in my spare time, and so that's what I like to do, and it's led me in a lot of ways to think about inclusion and inclusivity and diversity, marginalization, oppression, all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of what I do online is activism and activation, but specifically within the tabletop industry, I think is where my voice is actually most powerful, I guess. So that's where I do it. And in education as well, at the schools and stuff where I work.
So you said something that actually made me think I should probably give a little bit of my background that I don't normally give. The reason why this topic is kind of interest to me. My background has been partly in like community arts, creativity training, personal development, and conflict resolution. So working with cross community groups here in Northern Ireland, working with Catholic and Protestant teenagers, medically retired police officers, you got like a wide mix of people. Like I've met people who have done time for murder as paramilitaries, and it really kind of prompts you to, ask, about acceptance and how you perceive people, and also in terms of trying to affect change. Learning people's values and learning about conflict resolution really has helped me to see the human in people, and I think that's why I stay quiet a lot when there's like people are quite vocal about stuff, because I'm like I can kind of see both sides. They're maybe not expressing it in a way, but I can kind of get the pain behind what someone is saying, even if they're doing it in a way that isn't helping them to get their needs met. So for me, that my interest is in people seeing the human in others, I think is a kind of a fundamental thing. So I don't hang my hat on any one particular kind of agenda, which, myself and Corina have had kind of conversations about that, like maybe not stepping up quick enough at times. But that's kind of always my perspective, is it's like, and it informs how I design stuff, and that's part of what I'm really interested in the conversation tonight, because I think I sometimes push towards the worthy side of inclusivity, rather than just like including themes that are inclusive. for people. So that's kind of my background. It's that kind of personal development and helping people see the human in themselves and others as well. It informs my thought process.
I think that's really interesting. So I'll piggyback off of that and kind of give a bit of background for myself, because I think then it's relevant. I hadn't planned to do it, but I do think it's relevant. I actually have a degree in political science, European studies, and when I was in high school and I chose what I wanted to do for university and what I was going to do, I decided I wanted to work for Amnesty International. Now, clearly that's not happened, right? However, I was very, very keen on kind of figuring out why there was social injustice and how we can fix that. So for my bachelor's degree, I studied the 80s in Poland and looked at all the demonstrations and Solidarność and everything that happened in Poland that led to the democratic revolution in 1989 and the transition to democracy. And afterwards, I focused very, very much on human rights and social justice. Now, again, I work in marketing, so I get that I kind of went a bit in a different direction. But for those of you who know me, I am a very vocal person. I am very opinionated, and I do not shut up at all, ever. So working
You're my hero.
Let's not say why, please, on live stream. But working in the academia and then a couple of other jobs, and then in the gaming industry, they're mostly male-dominated industries. That's just how it is. And when you're young and you're a girl, you kind of tend to be overlooked, or your voice is just a bit quieter. So I decided to not be that person. So I am sometimes the loudest person in the room because I need to. And I think what's really important, and it's always been kind of my fight, and I am a feminist, and I that's just who I am, and that is my agenda, and I have no issue with saying that, is that women need to help each other. We need to build each other up, and that's the most important thing. In any sort of context, in any team, to help each other if no one else helps us, so we can get to the point in which, if we excel in our own powers. We don't want special anything. We just want to kind of be treated equally. And that's always been really, really important. So that's kind of my background, and that's why I talk a lot. So there we go.
You are all very deep. I feel I did forensic chemistry, and it wasn't of a thinking degree at all.
It's a different type of thinking.
Yeah.
I'm in the shallow end of the pool.
But you're deep in other parts.
Yeah. I actually just want to give a shout out to Jonathan. He's mentioned Marshall Rosenberg, who I actually had the honor of training with. That's how I learned nonviolent communication. I trained with Marshall it was like a 12-day intensive, where it was like a residential, where you had to live and breathe nonviolent communication for that period, and like learn how to resolve the conflicts that emerged with a bunch of 50 strangers inhabiting the same space together in that period. So he sadly passed away a few years ago, but nonviolent communication, it's like I always say, if I had to forget everything I've ever learned and I could keep one thing, nonviolent communication would be the thing, because it just helps across so many aspects of like my personal life and work life as well.
That's a really interesting point. Just in my work with communication disorders, that is the exact same thing. It's, there's a quote that we often talk about, which is, if I lost everything, the first thing I would want back is the ability to communicate, because with communication, I could regain everything. Right. And then just adding on that nuance of, nonviolent, just really kind of can change your mindset in terms of how you look at the world and how you deal with the people in the world. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not going to start, because I could just like go off on one about nonviolent communication. That's a whole other.
It's a whole other show.
It is. Yeah, it applies so much to like online communication here. Like a separate topic: how to communicate online.
You need at least a weekend to cover it all, I think.
Yeah.
Actually teach anyone.
So yeah, this is where I'll kind of jump in and probably pose questions, and I'm kind of riffing off Scott Nicholson, who kind of framed this for a talk we were meant to be having as part of Origins Online. Given that we've kind of less than an hour to chat about, and the broad theme is like inclusivity within kind of games, book, media, like what would if there's one thing we could have people kind of come away with from the conversation tonight, like what would it be?
That there needs to be more work done. Like it's, you know, way better than it was, but like it's nowhere near at a level where it's, you know, where there's no gatekeeping, where there's no feeling awkward. I mean, for me as a woman, like walking into a gaming tournament, like it's not a nice place to be if you're a woman. Like it's very testosterone heavy. Everyone is very angry. It does not feel like the type of place where me as a confident woman would want to be across the table from someone and play a tournament game with them. And it's just that sort of weird masculine toxic, you know, environment that it sort of breeds, and that's it's not okay. To start with, it's there's a lot of need for people to be more accepting of just the new type of people that are wanting to game. And when I say new, we're not new. We've been playing games forever, but now we're just being a bit louder about it.
Yeah. No, definitely. I do have to interject slightly, just saying, like, of course, my background is in organized play and events. To say that differs. What Anjuli described is accurate for some communities, but not for all. They're lovely, lovely communities that are very inclusive, that are very diverse. You walk into a tournament, into a regional or a higher event tournament, and you see such inclusivity and such diversity, and that's really, really amazing. But that indeed, unfortunately, does not apply for all gaming systems. I'm not the person who will name or shame or anything. That's not the point we're doing here. But it is true, it doesn't carry across every gaming system. But my first event, when I started working for Asmodee, that's where Anjuli and I actually got to know each other. Our desks were next to each other. My first event was an X-Wing System Open in 2018. That was the biggest event at that point in Europe. It was 500 and a bit players. Out of all the players, there were, I think, about 5 girls playing. In the team itself, we were 2 girls. Everyone treated me amazingly. Everyone was very respectful, very nice. I had to go past the barrier of, I was the match slip person, and I would put the match slip down and it would be like, thank you, love, thank you, darling, thank you, princess. And I'm like, this is a bit weird. And then I was told it's a British thing. And I'm like, okay, I guess it's still a bit weird, but I guess that's fine. But realistically, everyone treated me really nicely. And I saw grown people, grown men basically hugging it out after a game and going like, dude, the dice really, let's say you roll dice, unfortunately, because that's not what I wanted to say, but I'll keep it nice. The dice did not help you tonight. Next time you'll do better, and things like that. And this is only one example out of many. So we're not saying all gaming and all tournaments are bad. We're just saying that there is a toxicity and there is an issue with some situations in which we would not be as welcome as you would.
Yeah, and when I talk, I'm mainly focusing on like miniatures and wargaming, because that's what I do in my spare time. I help out Annie from Basquiat Games at the wargaming conventions. You know, the last one we went to was Hammerhead the weekend before lockdown, and you know we call them like old hams. Like they're just, you know, the majority of them is old men. And they get very shocked when they look at Annie's stand and they're like, but all of these miniatures are women. They're like, yes. There were women in wars. Did you know that? Yes. Yeah. And some of them are very shocked, but some of them are like, oh, I can get this for my daughter, or I can get this for my so you can get it for yourself as well. You know, there's nothing wrong about a man painting and playing women. But so when I talk about things, it's really more wargamey side of things, miniature painting side of things, than the board game side of.
And I want to say I'm really sad that Annie couldn't actually make it tonight. I was actually looking at her website today and saw the feudal Japanese figures. I'll be adding them to the shopping cart, even though I don't have like a samurai game to play, but those figures are amazing.
Now you're gonna have the figures to deal with.
Yeah, I'll find an excuse.
You should buy there's one called lady in single person bomb shelter. That lady is me.
Okay.
I have my own miniature.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
They call it the Wanjali, which isn't great, which is the war Anjali smushed
Okay.
together. So it's not the best name, but it's me, yeah. And I'm coming out of a single person bomb shelter going, is the war still on? And I've got like 40s hair. It's beautiful.
Is this a sculptor? Does she sculpt?
Yes, so it's a miniature that you can buy on her website. So it's part of her World War II Women in on the Home Front Kickstarter.
And what's her website?
badsquiddogames.com.
Oh yes. Squiddo.
Yeah. But yeah, so she made me into a miniature. I helped her with some research in London.
That's awesome.
I really just stood there and went, But yeah, she made me.
Sometimes you need that person, right? I think what I'd like to see or like to talk about today is that the idea of gatekeeping, the idea of culture and curating the culture before bad things happen, because we know that they will, and there's examples of how we can do that through communication and psychology, of creating a space for people to be safe in and through moderation. That would be nice. Representation matters. That's a good thing. And I'm super happy that Anjali's here from a book's perspective, because that's where a lot of my research comes into play, is in actual literacy and language learning and acquisition, and how to help that. So one of my areas of study is in development. I'm a developmental psychologist, so psychology professor. So what I do and look at specifically in my job, which is teaching people how to help people who have developmental disabilities, and learning doing research into language acquisition and seeing how representation in books is supremely important for language acquisition. And representation really, really matters for lots of things. And if we can assume it matters for that, then maybe it matters for games as well, because games are quintessential element of human learning and the human experience. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, for Aconyte, we're trying to, for inclusion, especially making sure that we have light sensitivity readers for when we write our Legend of the Five Rings stuff, because obviously none of us are, the four of us, we're all white English people. So writing in Japan is, and all of our authors as well, at the moment at least, are not Japanese. Hopefully that will change. But yeah, we make sure that we are culturally representing people right. And we also sort of have a queer agenda. We want to make sure that LGBTQ plus people are represented, both through our authors and through our stories as well. I'm pansexual, Lottie, our editor, is bisexual, and we very much want to make sure that we are including them as normal, like not as like a token,
right?
But it's just something that is within these worlds, and yeah, it's just making gay.
I have so many questions popping up out of this that I'm trying to act like the kind of the outsider. So you mentioned something there about the team being mostly made up of white writers. So one of the things about inclusivity and being mindful of different perspectives and cultures is involving people in the creative process. So I'm kind of curious, maybe to just talk for a minute about that, the continuum, right? So if you want to cover something, to what extent is it just don't go there, to have a sensitivity check, to make sure the actual contributors and all creators represent the topic that's being covered? Because I think that would be helpful for people to kind of get that sense of what's at least the smallest step you can take to be a bit more considerate in your creative or design process.
I mean, for us, we're lucky because we work in already established IPs. FFG work with us very closely in regards to the different stories and where they're taking things. And the team there are very knowledgeable about all of the backgrounds. And I don't know all of the team there, so I don't know where they are coming from, but they're always very, very good at pointing out to us when we send off our drafts to say, hey, this isn't correct. There was one, our book that's coming out in October, November, Curse of Honor, which is the Legend of the Five Rings. They were awkward about how we represented honor, and they said that we weren't doing that right. So we had to then get someone in to sort of talk us through the different stages of honor within these clans, and then we had to go back and rewrite basically the whole book. So it was meant to be our first book out, and we've had to push it back and back because we wanted it to be right, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't getting the theory of honor within Japanese sort of history wrong.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah,
because that's a huge misunderstanding of because you use a word that English people understand to represent a construct that is very, very different in Asia, and we don't think of it as honor. It's more like duty and face, and so it's very good. I'm happy to hear that. So thanks for letting me know. That, by the way, that does not give it the Asian stamp of
that's it. As approved by Sen-Foong Lim.
Approved by Asians.
Happy to hear that. It's something that I will go and look at and read and see, did they get it right? Because there have been, amongst my RPG friends who are Asian, a lot of comments as, did L5R get it right? And the first time around, there were, when it was under different auspices, it was like, maybe not. And then now that it's switched, a lot of my Asian friends just aren't willing to try it because it was not done great the first time around. But what you're telling me today is that FFG is maybe taking a different tact, and that's a good thing. So, thanks.
Just a side note, I watched The Farewell the other night. It's currently on Netflix, actually, for anyone who wants to watch it. And it's about a Chinese family whose grandmother has been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and the family decide not to tell her. And it's based on a true story, but it's incredibly funny and thoughtful and does such an amazing job of contrasting cultural differences between the children who had emigrated to the States and to Japan, and them coming back and trying to come to terms with but you must tell her, and this notion of family, duty, individuality, all of these things. It's just interwoven so incredibly well around just that one scenario. It just really made me pine to go back and visit all the people that I know in Hong Kong for my trips over there with work. It's a great film to check out and see that kind of that subtle difference in action as well. Sorry, I'm just reading the messages here.
Yeah, Lisa just asked a really good question in the chat.
I'm going to put it on the screen. It will kind of cover your faces, guys. I'm sorry about that because it's a big one. Covered everything. I'm very sorry.
Not me. I just keeps to see me.
So Lisa says, hello, this is really important to me right now. The LGS where I work is trying to figure out how we can usher in a more inclusive environment for gamers. Our player base is disproportionately white male and our staff comes from the player base. How do you think we could attract diverse people to apply for jobs when they are available? Thank you so much for joining us, Lisa, and thank you for the question. I think that it's a really, really interesting one because we come from different perspectives, right? So we work kind of from a publisher, designer, distributor kind of perspective. So it's
retail though.
Oh, there we go.
Managed bookshops.
True. Very true. So,
and I think this is actually an important part of the conversation because there's things that publishers can do, but there's also the element of, which needs to come first, changing the actual environment in which games are played and or the types of games that are being published. We need to do both. But, so I think it's actually really worthwhile talking about that based on, Anjuli, what you were saying just at the beginning about creating those welcoming environments. Maybe we can talk about that.
oh, sorry. I think you also need to tailor your advert for those people that you wish to attract. So we're at the bookshop that I used to work. We wanted weird, fun, quirky people who were confident and wanted to talk to people about a whole range of books. So our advert wasn't like wanted bookseller, apply within. It gave you a list of things that a bookseller must understand. And it was like, you must have frequently tried to get to platform 9 3/4. And it's things that you would know from various books in various genres. And if that advert spoke to you, then you come in. Also, it said must be willing to bring Skittles in small writing. And those people that brought their CV in with a packet of Skittles, they were great. But it's just trying to tailor your adverts to the kind of people that you want to come into your store. So make it bright, make it colorful, make it feel like a friendly, inviting advert. Would be from a management point of view, how to get people to apply is to make sure that they see it and go, hey, that's me.
But say, for example, because there's the element of and I see it in the best sense, like positive discrimination of like you want to invite specific people in to kind of broaden that base, but it looks like possibly Lisa's staff may not have that people in their friendship group or their professional group. So how do you write or create an ad that targets a wider audience without being offensive in the process of trying to do that?
You go and find those people. You broaden your own friendship groups.
Yeah.
If your friendship group is just white guys who play board games, then you're not experiencing the best of board games. You need to go to other game shops, see how they do it. You need to go to conventions. You need to make sure that you can say my group of friends are a diverse group of friends. I don't play board games with women. I should try and play board games with women so I know what they're looking for from board games and what is a safe environment for them.
Now, and actually this I think is really important, because not only are you tailoring an ad to try and get people who are more diverse or get new people in, but it's what happens to the team that's already there, right? So it's how to educate a team of people who are used to dealing with a particular type of audience, a particular player base, and this is not a bad example, but it's a sad example, and it's what Anjuli said earlier. I have walked in gaming stores and everyone went silent and stopped playing games and just stared at me. It's not really welcoming. Now, I was there for business, so I stayed and I introduced myself. But realistically,
just carry a clipboard. Just carry a clipboard. That's the answer.
Hello, I'm Corina from Asmodee. It's a big sign. I'm here for work. Don't freak out. I'm not an alien. I
don't want to play games.
It's that kind of thing that we want to avoid, right? So you should probably start also with kind of educating the team. And that sounds really, really weird, because how do you sit down with someone and say, so if the person you're playing the game with or you're selling a game to doesn't look like you, this is what you need to do? It sounds really, really stupid, but it's kind of starting from the very, very beginning, educating the team itself and how to not be surprised when a woman or, I don't know, a bunny rabbit walks in the store. It's kind of that moment as well, because then your audience will also change slightly. So you'll have a more diverse audience from which maybe you might be able to hire.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it is definitely creating a culture and an environment and a space that speaks to the audience that you want. And I can say this is true in at least 1 or 2 stores that are in my hometown, that if your game playing space is like the dingy, grungy basement of your game store where there's been floods and it smells like mold, that's people who don't want to be there won't be there, right? And so part of it is creating the environment that makes it conducive for the audience that you want. If you are okay with marketing 100% to that market base that currently comes to you, you don't make any changes and you're happy with it, and that's fine. But if you really want to start thinking about, well, how do I diversify my customer base and how do I get people buying that weren't buying before, which is the biggest problem in tabletop, by the way. It's we can sell to that guy 100% of stuff all the time because that is what they love and that's what they want. It's trying to convince somebody else from outside the hobby to come into the hobby and then become that lifelong customer. That's the hard sell. And that's what I think a lot of companies don't do very well because they keep preaching to the masses as opposed to looking outside and trying to actually do some marketing, right? Actually market, create a new market somewhere else other than exploiting the same old market, because the same old market, the same tactics are going to work. I just saw a Dragon Shield ad from, I can't remember what magazine, a trade magazine. And it wasn't Dragon Shield that does the ad. Dragon Shield, by the way, is a sleeve company for sleeves for cards. And they made the trade magazine made this ad with dragon shields on one side, and then a girl not doing anything but in a dragon shirt with like her belly showing, a pretty girl on the other side. And it's like, what are you trying to say with that messaging, right? And how inclusive does that feel? As if I'm cringing, what's going to happen when a game store owner who's a woman sees that ad, and like they might think that's pretty sexist. And here's a pro tip: it is sexist.
Well, that's the assumption.
Yeah.
Of it, like they're not thinking of targeting that audience. That's kind of the problem. I'm gonna kind of go back, because it's such a basic fundamental thing that I suspect you're kind of taking it for granted. If you want to broaden your horizons, right, and welcome more people into gaming, and they're not part of your sphere for whatever reason, you've maybe moved somewhere. Part of the challenge in Ireland is like we are not ethnically diverse as a country. We get accused of being racist, and there are definite like strong undercurrents of racism, but a lot of it is just when I used to say, like, our streets weren't paved with gold in terms of or slavery to kind of attract to bring people over. But if you're trying to broaden your scope, whether it's kind of gender or ethnicity, and like it seems a bit weird, like how do you actively go out and meet people within that sphere, or the gaming sphere, or socialize with that broader group to extend those connections, and especially if there's this weird kind of ulterior motive of like the store where you're trying to broaden your audience as well. So it's not just social, it's like there's a kind of work element to it, and how that doesn't come across as kind of underhanded as well. I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on that aspect.
I think personally, social media, get yourself on Twitter, get yourself talking to people of color, get yourself talking to females within the industry, start building a community where you are an active person, listening to what those people are saying and reacting to what they're saying. Yep. If you're, I've got lots of board game companies that follow me, and I like to have, we have conversations about inclusivity and women, and they want to have these conversations with me, which is amazing. And then I can point them in the direction of other people as well. I think it's really important to find people who have a voice on social media and show them that you're listening and that you want to learn from them, and then act on that you're learning from.
Yeah, that's definitely the first step. Educate yourself, learn. And that's the reality. Even now with lockdown and everything, we spend so much time on our computers because we have to, and that's how a lot of us socialize these days, because you can't really do anything else. Take that extra time instead of just scrolling randomly for Facebook. Find the board gaming groups, find the people like Anjuli on Twitter, find those people and start talking and start conversations. And if you don't know where to go, literally just post on your own feed, or go and hashtag something. Well, I'll figure out a hashtag and I'll post it in here, but start talking and start the conversation yourself. And that will be good enough. There are loads of Facebook groups that are amazing, and people will jump in and talk. Don't be afraid to be wrong. You're here to learn. That's perfectly fine. Everyone starts from somewhere. We're not saying we know everything. That's definitely not it. But we're open, right? That's the whole point. We're open to talking about what's wrong and trying to make it better. And that's all that matters.
Be willing to make changes. Be willing to be uncomfortable for a little bit. That some of the stuff we're talking about is hard and it's uncomfortable, and it's not easy. I call it the work, because you have to do the work in order to get past some of these they're literally cognitive biases that you have trained into you by society from a very, very early age in a lot of ways, and then reinforced by society and how we reward certain behaviors. And in order to break that cycle, you have to actively and intentionally and thoughtfully do it. And a lot of people don't because they're not willing to make mistakes. That's one thing. And a lot of people don't because they're just not willing to make those changes because it's uncomfortable. And then a lot of people just are blissfully ignorant because the majority serves them, right? They are the dominant people in their space. And so, I mean, that goes to one thing I wanted to talk about, which is that creation of a space for people who aren't of the majority. How are you doing that as a company? How are you doing that as a store? Are you welcoming? Do you have a, women's only magic night or something like that? Because my wife plays Magic. My wife is actually a pretty good Magic player. She was the only woman in my university to play in our sealed booster group, which was like this thing that ran for a year. She was the only woman out of like 45 guys. And that's not why I married her, but it's part of it, I guess. But I mean, that was 30 years ago. But it still shocks me that people, question the need for safe spaces or spaces where people can be safe. My classroom, I don't actually call it a safe space. I call it a brave space because I can't guarantee safety in my classroom. I don't control other people's voices. But I can guarantee that people can be brave and speak up, and I won't judge them for that. And if you as a store can do that as well, that say, I'm gonna create a store space where I have a code of conduct that has teeth. I will kick people out if I will lose that customer to keep you as a customer if they do something that is against this code of conduct. We have to be willing to do those uncomfortable things, right? And yes, it's the bottom line at some level. If we are, if let's say, one of the old school person who's there playing a war game, does something completely and utterly racist or sexist, and we're forced to kick them out and we lose their 4 friends along with them, you have to be okay with that. Yeah. That's something you have to, if you are truly and honestly wanting to change the face of gaming to be more inclusive, there are some hard things that you have to do. You have to be okay with that. And I'm okay if you're not. I just won't shop at your store.
It echoes something I used to do with, it was actually personal development work with people, of finding the thing that you stand for. And it's like, because it just changes how you behave and act and be in the world. And it'll cause some people to drift away, but it also creates a space for other people it's almost like an invisible radio signal that you're sending out. And that when you start transmitting that in kind of intent, you will attract other people who are drawn to that as well. And the painful bit is seeing the people go, but in a way, they weren't really hanging around for what you stood for anyway.
Right, exactly.
So I think that's kind of a good way of looking at it, is by setting the intent yourself that you're going to change and head in this direction. You will lose some people, but the store will become, I think, stronger on the back of it.
And really, what did you lose?
Yeah, some short-term pain. So I think Lisa has a question, which I think is really interesting, about if you do create a women's gaming group, does that exclusivity help the situation? So like, what's the, whether it's whatever group that is, and I think it'd be interesting to talk beyond just women as well. How does that benefit, like short-term and longer term?
So one, it gets that group that is uncomfortable to come into your store for whatever reason, to come into your store and to see your store, to meet your staff, and to know that this place exists and that they can come here for their Magic the Gathering. But it also means that they can see what else you have on offer.
Yeah.
And you can create a loyal customer from that by talking to them, by engaging them in everything that your store offers. You've made a customer, someone who wants to come back on maybe on just a regular Magic night, or maybe during the day they're going to come in and they're going to pick up a board game. Maybe then they'll see other people are playing board games during the day and they'll think, oh, I've got some friends that might want to play board games. And but it's giving them that safe space to start with, to say it's okay to be here. We're not going to think you're weird, and we're a little weird because we work with board games, but that's okay. And if you are weird, we embrace you with consent.
Yeah.
Very important. Consent is important.
Consent is important. Yes, I like that. The idea of, like, if you think about it as an exclusive thing that they only come to that, well, at least you got them there, right? That's like, what's the harm? Because the upswing of it is that they'll come to lots of other things. Like, if 90% of the people who come to the women's only gaming group stay only at the women's gaming group, but that 10% that say, oh, you know what, I'm going to come to some other events, or going to buy from your store regularly, or my husband would love this too, or my kids, and we'll come to your other events, or we'll shop at your store regularly. I'll spread the word about this to my other friends who aren't necessarily there for just the women's only thing. I actually don't see a downside. You might get some pushback from,
why isn't there a men's only night?
Because every other night is
men's only night. Shut up.
Right? And it's true. Like they could. It's not expressly a men's only night, but it effectively is demographically when you look at the situation, and it's a sea of guy faces.
So is it a case of having to be like, it's just a case of making your intent very, very clear to people, and making the invitation very clear that you're not trying to be exclusive, but the reality is you've only had male gamers coming to the store, and if you don't kind of push it that bit harder to be inviting, it's still going to fall flat. If it unless you kind of make it very clear this is for you specifically.
It is hard.
I'd find a middle ground, and I would invite people who already come to your game nights. I would say, look, we're organizing this. We're looking for more people to teach the game. And then if you have a combination of your already existing audience who is open-minded and is inclusive and is there for the love of the hobby, not just to win at a card game, then you can have that mix. You can have that transition foster as well. So I would actually enlist the help of your audience and say, hey, Thursday, because Friday night is regular Friday Night Magic, let's not go that far, but Thursday night we'll do women's Magic. Do you want to come and help us demo or kind of show people who come in around? And that's also a bit of a transition that might really, really help.
Yeah, just make sure that they're not like rage table flip Magic players.
Hence me saying open-minded and inclusive players. Not to be noted. Neither Anjuli or I are saying that Magic players are toxic and they flip tables. This was an example used for hyperbole.
Yes.
And what's a good... I know we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but I suppose it ties into creating community. Like, because this ties in back into games then. So what are good... is there particular kind of games or like topics for those nights that would create a good synergy for new players who don't feel like games speak to them right now?
Oh, that's an interesting topic. I think things that are not necessarily confrontational, perhaps cooperative games, games that are a little more abstract and not to take that in terms of like fighty, punchy. I think those games might be in general for people in general who don't like conflict. It's not just women. There's lots of people who don't like confrontation, and games to them need to be an escape from that. Maybe their life is filled with confrontation, and they just want to make meaningful decisions within a game space with people around them. And so I think there are you can curate an experience by picking the right games, and there are people who are really, really good at that, and hire them. They are thoughtful people who think about, what is the message this game actually sends? I know Rory is that type of person because of the games that he makes, right? There's very specific messaging in a lot of the games that we're doing today. We've got to that level, I think, in game design where we can at least start doing that. But if you're trying to pick a game and you say, okay, let's have Sheriff of Nottingham and Ticket to Ride and Pandemic. If anybody has problems with those, that would be few and far between versus picking games like, Memoir 44 or something where it's, obviously war related. I think you can curate that kind of stuff. We, at one of the cafes that I used to frequent, we'd tell people, these are the games we are teaching tonight.
Yeah.
Because it very, very just, intentionally was about gateway games and about games that were non-confrontational and games that we could teach in like 5 minutes and you could play 3 times before you left. So I think there's a real need to be intentional about your actions when it comes to doing this right, because if you do it wrong, that person's not coming back.
Yeah, I definitely agree, but I would take it a step further and say be prepared that some beginners, some new people to the hobby will find those gateway games boring and will want the Memoir 44 and everything else in your store. Be prepared to come up with a recommendation and pull it off the shelf and say, so this you think this is a bit slow paced? Cool, let's try this one. Yeah. Have that backup, but definitely curate that start. I totally agree. Have that starting kind of the collection of games to go, these are it. If these were not your pace, then we're ready to give you something else. Don't just assume you're new, so you'll write your thing. I think that kind of being adaptable, being flexible to that end store is also really, really important.
And this is just kind of a quick side thing, because I was called up on it, and I think it's a really interesting point to share. So I tweeted a photo over the weekend of, we were playing Pret-a-Porter, which is like a heavy Euro game set in the world of fashion. And we'd had a whole conversation, but I posted a picture and I said, I think I finally found a game that my daughters would enjoy playing. And they're 12 and 14. And Anita said, look, Rory, I know the conversation we had, but the way you phrase that, like, sounds like because it was like about fashion, that it was a game for them. Yeah. And that absolutely was not the case. It was, the game had meaningful decisions and had a more of a real world setting, like the economics of business, with kind of bank loans and everything. That was the bit that appealed to them, and they could get why they were making the choices and playing the game. And also the just the aesthetic of the game was, for me, I would consider like a clean design for the game. So it was kind of interesting. It's like that, finding the relevant themes in the games as well that speak to people as well. So you can I think by having a relevant theme, you can actually push people further in terms of the mechanics that you're asking them to engage with as well.
Resonance is important.
You know, it's really interesting. So Pret-a-Porter came out a long, long time ago. And then when Ignacy, this is a Portal Games game, when Ignacy was talking about making a second edition of the game, he actually considered changing the theme to video games. He generally considered that for a while to see if that would mainstream it, if whenever he made the second version, the more streamlined version, if it made sense to go in a different direction. And then he decided, you know what, no, because I'm Ignacy, so I will do the exact same game. I will make it better and I'll put it out there. And it makes me really happy to hear that in your eyes, Rory, he made the good decision. He made a correct decision by doing that.
Yeah. Well, like, my daughters were generally, they're both really, really smart kids. Generally aren't into playing games because they just look at the themes and they're like, nope. Like I always say, like trading in the Mediterranean, nope, thank you. The whole category of games.
It's that fine balance where we say, oh, they like it because it's about fashion and dresses, versus they only like it because it's about fashion and dresses. Like, there's nuance to this. I saw the post, and when I saw it, I rolled my eyes because and I'm not rolling my eyes at you, Rory. I'm just rolling my eyes because I said, oh, I'm just going to wait for the storm to happen and hit. And it's that thing, my kids are boys, they're both boys, and they're interested in very specific things. But you'll also find that, they're surprisingly also interested in this. And why does that come as a surprise? Because of societal biases. And and it's this sort of thing that, yes, maybe we can use interests as a gateway, but hopefully things will broaden from there and they'll be interested in games that you wouldn't, that are surprising for good reasons, right? It's a hard thing to do, though, because we do, as human beings, we do this thing called niche selecting, where we like what we like because we like it, and so we seek it out more, right? and it's a hard thing to break.
Yeah, I would say I never used to play board games. I RPG mainly. So it wasn't until I started working at Asmodee that I started to get some games, and they were all like cooperative games. And because I don't like to lose, so competitive gaming doesn't impress me at all, because I will lose because I can't work it out. But now that I've been playing them for a few years, I do feel a little bit more confident to play them and be okay with losing. Corina beat me terribly at a game, which has scarred me for life, and I may never play it.
Which game is it?
It's one called Layers, and you have to like layer up these. I couldn't do it. I couldn't see the layers, and Corina was like, "Boom, boom, boom, 3 seconds, done." And I was like, still holding these pieces, going, "I don't understand." I could not see any of it that way.
So it's really bad, because I had totally forgotten about this experience, and Anjuli mentioned it on Sunday, and I'm like, I have no clue. So I went into Google. I log all my gaming, absolutely all the games I play. I log the plays in BGG. So I went to figure out, okay, so Anjuli, what games have I played with Anjuli? Oh, it was this game. I couldn't remember.
For me, it's burnt into my memory.
Yeah, it's a scar.
Yeah, this game that I just couldn't even get a point on because
it's like a legacy game, and you got a scar on you.
Yeah.
In my defense, we were playing in a lunch break. We had a 1-hour lunch break. We were trying to get more games in, and it was a speed game, so there was double speed in the game.
So that's what not to do when a new player comes along to your game.
Yeah, don't trounce them.
No, they were both players. Yeah, but Corina could just see the logical bit of it, and I was like the creative trying to look at like the cut, and I just was the wrong person for that game, like because my brain does not work in that way, and it's the reason why I don't like a lot of like really in-depth, like deep board games, because I don't like to see 5 steps ahead ever in my whole life. You know,
right.
Live each day as I go, and I board game each second as I go. So yeah, I'm not good at those type of games.
It's funny that there's something I want to come back to about role-playing games, but I hear a lot like people talking about games, people playing games for the social benefits for it. And I think one of the big things, and you're kind of hitting on it, is that I think a lot of people play games for sense of meaning, and to matter. Like playing a board game meets this need for kind of certainty and control over that micro world in which you're playing. And I was really surprised, like talking to an old colleague who, for him, playing a game and beating someone soundly gave him like deep satisfaction. Like he wanted to be tested, and he wanted to prove that he was like the best. And
I wouldn't go with that person.
No. Well, so he got T-shirts made that said like, "I beat Pedro," which was a running joke because we would like post online to his Portuguese friends like, "We beat Pedro," and they'd go back, "Yay!" Well, what I mean is, I think for some people, and it's missed sometimes, like games provide this sense of the world is chaotic. It doesn't give us feedback on whether we made the right choice or not. And, and that can be stressful. Whereas playing a board game gives us that control. But I think sometimes people lose sight of that. They're maybe playing with other people who are playing for different reasons as well. And I think that's a big part of like that game selection and curation and creating that kind of first game night experience for people, as well as being, I think, mindful of those players who play for that sense of like meaning and purpose, to maybe invite them to kind of step back and let others demo on that occasion.
Or just don't invite them.
There's
activity, invite everyone.
Everybody. There is a way to do that, right? There's a way to measure psychographics for players and player types, and then curate games specifically for them or the group that they're playing in. The most probably, and we talked about Magic a lot in this particular show, but probably the most famous ones that people will know of are the psychographics for Magic the Gathering. And based on them, what style you're probably going to play, what part of the color pie that you're probably going to exploit, and all these types of things. They're actually quantifiable. And so you could totally do that if you wanted to give like an entry exam in your store. Say, hey, just fill out this questionnaire and I'll pick out some games for you that you might like. You could probably do that. There's probably some correlative factors between that and the different games, because different games kind of turn different cogs in our head. And so for your friend Pedro, who might like mastery of the game system is something they like, and so they might really like Vita Lacerda games, like really deep sort of nuts and bolts and twists and turns and that kind of stuff. Those are the games you'd sell him, but you would never sell him like Mysterium. Off the bat, unless he said I liked it, and then he said, "Oh yeah, sure, that's a great game," but you wouldn't necessarily like push that in his direction based on his player graphics. So,
I have to say, he's a big fan of Paku Paku.
Excellent game. Excellent game.
That's a great game.
That's hilarious. It's great.
Anjuli, I have it. I'll show it to you.
Yeah, you have to check it out. I have just so many great memories of playing that in Essen and Nuremberg.
It's really good fun. It's really, really good fun.
Just while we have a moment, Corina, can you look behind you and see, is there like a playmat? Please? Like covering a box or anything?
Playmat? You need to be more specific. What am I looking for?
It's covering over a box, I think. Let me check. We have a gift for you, because this is like your last week working with us.
Oh,
yes, so, that is accurate.
Yeah. So hang on. Let me check.
I'm confused by this.
So we
very
confused. Is there like a settee behind you or something? Or maybe it's in another room. There should be a
hidden in the house. Is it a treasure hunt?
No, is there a black canvas drawer behind you?
Yes. 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 I have found the thing.
That's so exciting.
I panicked for a second because you said playmat, and I'm like, I pack games. I don't know what you want. I might need to unpack it from a box. So
yeah, so Corina had just been working with us for a few months to help with our social media and helping us prepare organized play for Prism Arena, which is coming out in September. Cool. Speaking of which, we've actually seen the production copies, and they're looking awesome, as well as the launch kits, which we had worked on.
Super really excited about that. That would be amazing. Yeah. Coming to stores. Yay!
So we were planning to have like a Zoom catch up tomorrow with the team, but Corina, you're going to be en route to Nottingham to look for a new house.
Yeah.
So we decided to get you a small gift just to say thank you. And I was nearly going to say it sooner because I know how much you like gin.
It is gin.
Oh, the gin.
All the gin.
Yeah.
That's my favorite type, that one. Yes. Well, that's my favorite.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Is that Fever Tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very aromatic. Yeah.
So I just want to publicly say thank you for all of your help over the last few months.
Yay!
And hopefully it won't be the end.
Oh, don't cry. She's going to cry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I've said this before. You're an amazing human being, and it's been an honor to work with you. Again, we've known each other for years, but this has been an amazing couple of months, and you have an amazing team and such amazing projects, and it's just been, I might cry a bit. I'm sorry. It's just been really, really great. It's really...
a pity they're all frozen in carbonite at the moment on furlough.
I really appreciate it this time, and it's just been really, really great. Thank you very much, and thank you for the gin. I will keep this bottle until I move down to Nottingham, and then Anjuli and I will take pictures whenever I move in, and then we'll send them across.
Thank you.
Yes, that comes without saying. But yes, this will be my moving in bottle.
You'll open the front door, take the bottle, push Corina out, just shut the door.
But yeah, this will be the first night in Nottingham bottle. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everything.
So I kind of feel like the conversation's just getting started. There's like so much to cover. I'm conscious we're kind of at 8:00. Do you think we've covered some ground that's useful? I'm wondering if Lisa's still around, if anything we've said has been...
Yeah, off to work. But...
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I think we definitely covered sort of, that ground level sort of basics, getting people in the door and making people feel safe and brave. I really like that, the brave space. For sure. I mean, there's definitely, once you've got them in the door, there's then another thing of keeping them there and making sure that the environment stays like a safe and happy environment for everyone. And that's its own separate thing. And yeah, we're lucky I didn't get onto miniatures and unrealistic women.
I have a company in particular who I've said it to them so many times. I would love to introduce your game to other people, and I just can't because of the figures, and I will play it behind closed doors.
I get banned from a lot of Facebook groups because I literally will join them and be like, what the hell is that? Why is her boob bigger than her head? And then all the boys will attack me, and then I'll get banned, and I'll come back under another name.
Vengeance.
It's boy back boy.
And then I take screenshots, and then I outs them on Twitter.
I like it. I think what's really important is not everyone needs to be as loud as we are. Not everyone needs to be as outspoken as we are. But when you see something happening that's not okay, you don't need to interact with that person directly, but tell someone. Be a friend, be an ally to the person who's being discriminated against or who's being made uncomfortable in any way. Make a change, even if it's in your immediate surrounding. Make a change for the best. And I generally believe that that's how it's going to be better. It's not enough that, we have a couple of people shouting on the various channels. It's the smaller steps that matter so much. Make a change and be a friend and be an ally. This community is the best community. It's the best industry to work in. It's the best community in the world to be part of. Let's make it even better. And again, I know that sounds really soppy, but it's sappy, but it's really true. This is a social hobby. Let's be social together. Let's fight for that kind of just happiness and peace. We do this because we enjoy it. Let's make sure everyone else enjoys it, right?
Yeah, and just remember that. Oh, go ahead. No, Angela, go.
If you're not a loud, outspoken person, which I obviously am because I butt in all the time, then and you see something, tell the loud person. A lot of the tips that I get are from people who say, I can't say this because I'm a company, or I can't say this because I'm afraid to say this. Yep. Here's the link. Can you do something? And because I am very happy to be banned from everything and have a big mouth, I will go after those things for people. Because it needs to be said. So find someone who'll say it if you can't. It's okay if you can't. Because it's hard to shout and scream about these things. It's only in the last couple of years that I've had the confidence to be like, you suck and you suck and you suck, and here's why. But I'm happy to do that. You see something, let me know on Twitter.
Yeah,
same here. Not on Twitter though. Instagram or Facebook.
I want that. What you just did, Anjuli. I want that as a GIF. You suck and you suck and you suck, and here's why.
Make that GIF.
Yeah, I think you're all right in this matter. For those of you who are out there in the world who are feeling uncomfortable about the way things are going, know that there's somebody like next to you that's feeling uncomfortable as well, and that if you speak up, they might speak up as well. If you share, they might share. But if you are literally uncomfortable to the point where you cannot say something because you have a fear for your safety or your life or something like that, find somebody, like Anjuli said, just find somebody to do that. There's a lot of people who don't have a voice in this industry. There are unfortunately broken stairs in this industry. There are problems. There are, like, as rosy a picture as Corina's painting, and it is an awesome industry to be a part of. There are bad actors, just like there are in any other place. It just happens to ruin this industry more so because we are a happy place in general, right? So when something bad happens, it's a big downer for us all. But don't let that be a thing. Don't let the fear of ruining a good thing stop you from doing the right thing, because we have to be there for each other. Otherwise, why are we playing games with people? I could sit and play on my computer all day long. but I want to play with other people, and I want to have genuine interactions and relationships with people, and I want to trust people. As a person of color, you can see, I mean, I'm looking very whited out black. Oh, it's just my lighting in this room. But I'm a person of color, and as a person of color, I will say that I have lost a lot of trust in people over the last little while who, you know, it's not good enough to be non-racist or non-anything. Oh, I don't see color. I don't, you know, I don't do any of that. It's like, how about you be anti the bad thing? You know, be anti-racist, be anti-sexist, be anti all the bad things. And we're at a point in history where I think that's going to be, you know, more of the way of the world. You know, being Switzerland doesn't help anybody, like literally except the Swiss. That's who got helped by being Switzerland got helped by being Switzerland and being neutral. So if you think that remaining neutral is doing something, it's actually doing nothing except serving yourself. If you really believe that there are people out there and there's injustice in the world, do your part, do a little bit, be anti the bad thing. That's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah. And I think what you said earlier, don't be afraid of making things awkward. Don't be afraid of having uncomfortable conversations. That's part of it. And
yeah, I've been awkward my entire life by virtue of being born not white in Canada. I've been awkward my entire life. My entire life has been a series of unfortunate events to, you know, quote Lemony Snicket's. It's thrust upon me, and so I can't avoid it. Wherever I go, I'm not the majority in Canada. And so I challenge you, people who are of the majority, to think about that a little bit and think, you know, oh, I didn't realize that it's that awkward. And it's not the big things that actually I'm affected by, to be completely honest. Like KKK, that doesn't affect me on a daily basis. Literally does not affect me on a daily basis. But what does affect me on a daily basis is people talking about the Chinese virus, or, you know, when I was a kid, you know, people doing the slant eye thing. That affected me on a daily basis. And it shaped who I am today in some good ways and some bad ways. And so you just kind of have to think about it that way. It's really the big bad of, you know, man in a white hood coming to get me is not my biggest fear. It's not even close to any one of my biggest fears. You know what my biggest fear is? That somebody that I trust will betray my trust. Somebody that I like will turn out to be a bad actor. That is my biggest fear. So don't be that person. Stand up, do something, show people like me and like Corina and like Anjuli and like Rory, who might be different in very many ways that we don't even know. Show those people that they have people that they can trust. And that is what will bring us closer together. Right? And we might have to kick some people out. Tolerance of the intolerant, right? I mean, it's this weird kind of dichotomy that we get called on a lot. It's like, so aren't you the people who claim be tolerant of everybody being intolerant by kicking somebody out of your little club? It's like, yeah, but they're the ones who are intolerant of everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw something out because I struggle with it a bit in terms of how like online activity kind of like demands instant response, and it's quite easy to get caught into that. So a key thing I learned in the nonviolent communication training, which stemmed from like Marshall Rosenberg growing up in Detroit during the race riots and figuring out how some people carried a lot of anger and others, the same things just didn't seem to affect them. And that was kind of like the foundation for his work. And he would say, like, so we're all human beings and we're all doing the best we can to meet kind of the same universal needs. But so we all share the same needs, but the strategies we use to try and meet those needs are what can often create conflict with others, but also with ourselves at the same time. And when you get that, it kind of changes your perspective of when people are acting, that you tend to look at behavior and go, instead of getting angry, you kind of go, oh, yeah, I'm kind of mourning that maybe they have certain needs and they think that's the best way they can meet that need.
100%.
So when I look at, you know, someone spouting off or like doing anything, it's like my first reaction is generally sadness. It's like, man, I wish there was a better way for them to meet their need that didn't trounce all over the needs of other people. And, you know, and there's another part to that kind of equation, which is you can try and contribute to the needs of others. If that meets your own needs, to contribute to the well-being. But there's a certain point where you say, you know what, actually, my needs just are continuing to not be met in this scenario. So I'm choosing to basically move on from this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like it's a lot more work than to just go, you're a dick, and you shouldn't talk like this. It's because you're usually connecting like to a pain or a fear that person is carrying that's resulting in them behaving that way. And that's a longer conversation than you can really have on Facebook. And so that's why for me, it's quite often, you know what, I don't think it's really worth it's going to be helpful to engage in this conversation here in this medium right now. Like I'll try and be curious, if anything, and to me, because nonviolent communication, it was described as like verbal Aikido.
Yeah, it is.
You don't get caught up in the energy of the person, but you kind of use it. And there's times where I've magically seen conversations turn around online where I thought it was going one way, and just that person being heard was just like, it totally changed things around. But generally, online communication is not the way for that to happen. And I think that's what makes a lot of this so much harder, where you can have those people in the physical space together, and it's maybe easier to connect body language with words and actions to have that dialogue. So I would kind of say also, if you witness that, there's maybe people better equipped in that medium to have that conversation. Like I actually, for all my training in conflict resolution, I run away from conflict. Like I'm a very let's say if you know the Enneagram, I'm like a 7 on the Enneagram. I want to stay up and positive all the time. So I'll turn and face it when I have to, but it's not my first place. So I think, Anjuli, you make a really good point, is to kind of like almost within different mediums, find the people who find it comfortable to communicate in that space and call on their support to try and make things better for other people. Because again, it's that our needs not being met in this scenario. Okay, well, how do we reduce that from happening as well? You're not going to help people get all of their needs met, but you can kind of limit needs not being met. That's kind of a very weird way of saying it, but yeah.
No, that's good. I like that. Works for me.
Yeah, so that's actually, so my offer to people is I'm often called on as a translator, like for this person said this or is acting this way. Yeah. And I go, well, I imagine this is what might be going on for them at that point. And it helps diffuse some of the kind of the tension that's there. As well, like the blame and judgment that might kick off immediately. So that's kind of my offer to people. If they need like help with seeing things through a slightly different lens, I'm happy to act as a translator in that regard.
You're the conflict whisperer. I like it.
Yeah, I run away from the conflict and now whisper.
my offer to people, and my Twitter is at SENFOONGLIM, at Sen-Foong Lim, is right now, especially in North America, people of color, especially Black people, are under a lot of pressure that you may not just realize, that there's some bad stuff going down in the United States of America right now. And if you are a company, if you are a store who is trying to, maybe get your Black Lives Matter statement together or something like that, don't ask a Black person. Like literally just don't, because they are under worlds of pressure that you may just not understand. Like, where are their relatives? Where are the people? Where do they see? Like, you see John Boyega, who does not live in America, getting so upset about this. Why? Because he empathizes, because he's lived through experiences that are very, very similar, even though he's not in America. And then you think about, oh, well, it's a Black person. I'll go ask them to help me, do my stuff. And that's the issue, is you're asking them to help you do your stuff. Yeah. You need to do the work. You need to go get educated. But I'm also willing to help you on that, because I am like 2 steps away from that, right? I'm not Black. I'm not Indigenous. I'm of what we call in Canada and America the model minority. I'm the good minority, which is ridiculous, right? But that's where I stand, and that's my skill set. So if you have a problem dealing with race relations right now, look me up. I will help you get through that, because I don't want you burdening people who are legitimately in the trenches on this one, mentally or physically, because I am not. I'm in Canada, but I have enough knowledge of the situation, the systems down there, and of racism to at least give you a step in the right direction without you having to bother somebody who is mentally does not have the spoons to cope with what you're probably asking them to do. Right? Do the work. It's not hard. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
That's a really good point. That's a really, really good point.
Just on like that, doing the work, I listened to the 14-part series, Seeing White. And that was like the first episode for that, even for that, for me, was a real eye opener of even considering myself to be fairly open. And there was just points they made in that first episode. I was like, right, okay, yeah, this is where my world gets turned upside down. And it was like that. It was like 14, 45-minute episodes. And it felt like just doing a course of basically, you know, having some better understanding of the weight of 400 years on people, and the role that the creation of the term black and white being essentially a form of power grab that was being used. There's lots of really compelling moments in it that give you food for thought. And I think I would say if there's anything that people want to do, for me being white, that was like one of the best things for me to just educate myself a little bit more on stuff I'd no idea about, really.
And even if you think you have an idea, you might actually not.
Yeah, you don't.
You really don't. Like I don't, and I'm a person of color, but I still don't know everything that's gone down, and a lot of it has been erased from history, like literally erased from history. Not even just from the books. I mean, like cities wiped out. Like go look up Rosewood, Florida, and figure out what happened there. It doesn't really exist anymore, right? So entire swaths of land where Black people inhabited historically gone. Why? Figure it out. It's a lot of work because we're not taught it in school.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of and this is definitely a longer conversation, but that's where a lot of this starts in school, and what your normal is, and what your us versus them identity creation is, and all of those things. Where my cat really wants attention. I started packing, so she's really stressed. This is what's happening, so she just wants attention all the time. Sorry about that. But it's kind of that thing with starting in school and showing inclusivity and showing diversity and showing that it doesn't really matter. Their words, their labels, their things, their whatever it is, that we're all the same and we're all equal, and we should all be treated with respect, regardless of whatever makes us different, because the social construct dictates that's what the difference is. I think that's, for me at least, really, really important.
Yeah. I will caution people on, please, if you're talking to a person of color, don't tell them that you don't see color. It's really awkward. It's a really awkward situation because we are forced every day of our lives to see color. We have to. We cannot live without seeing color. We will get arrested. We will get killed. Things will happen that won't happen to you because we are of color. And that's not, it's just a fact of life right now. I mean, my hope is that my kids and their kids past that don't have to see color, but we aren't at that point yet. And if you tell me that, I will not think of you as an ally. I will think of you as somebody who is blind to the fact that we live very different lives that you just don't understand. That's what I will think. And most people of color will think that way, not because we're conditioned, not because there's some meme that says that, but because we've learned that people who say that aren't trustworthy.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And thank you for adding that, because that's definitely not what I was trying to say.
I know,
was trying to say that we educate, but I do feel like what I was saying could have been interpreted wrong. So generally, thank you for adding that. That's 100% not what I was saying. And it is true, because that's the thing. Everyone sees life from their own lens, and we're selfish in a way in which that's the lens that applies to everything. So I have an example. It's a really, really stupid example, but I went with a friend to see a film in a different town. Went to the cinema. There was a bus replacement for the train, so we had to wait for an hour. So we started walking on the street. It was nighttime, and he took me. He's tall dude, lovely dude. I love George. George is amazing. We started walking. I didn't know this is the town, and he walked on the creepiest, dodgiest streets and alleys in the dark that I had ever seen. So I just kind of curled up and went like, "This is really creepy." He's like, "No, it's fine." I'm like, "No, this is not okay. This is me going, something bad might happen here." And he was like, "No, I get what you mean now, though. Let's go." Yeah. Because you see things from your own lens, and yeah, you shouldn't. You should put yourself in the other person's shoes and think, would this be okay? Or is this something would I take this lightly if someone would say that to me or do that to me? And I think we should do more of that.
Which, bringing it back to games, because that's what we all do, is why I was super interested when the game that Rory made, which I can see on your back shelf over there, right there. Oh, that one right there was really interesting to me because of my professional role, but also because of the idea of games creating empathy, right? And games creating a state of inclusivity and understanding of other people's perspectives and all those types of things. So there's a lot of things I think we can do. I struggle in the board game space, to be honest, but then I soar in the RPG side of things. I think RPGs are a really good way to do that. And then I think there's some hybrid type style games that we can make between RPG and board card, where we can hopefully create some empathy for different people, different situations, so that we raise a generation that is seeing things in a different way than their forefathers. Because that's really a lot of what this is just baggage. It's baggage that we are carrying from people that came before us, and it's why do we pick it up? Mm-hmm. Right? Can we let go of it when we're told that, hey, you're carrying old baggage there? Why are you carrying that?
And I think just on that note with the games, like, I realized that when I'm thinking about games, I usually start with, like, I want people to feel or experience something, and that's my way of kind of broadening the scope. And I realize actually sometimes it just needs to be a really cool game with an interesting, theme or like characters on it. And my partner Anita sometimes is saying, it just doesn't have to be worthy. And my whole thing is, like, there has to be something going on beneath the surface, or it delivers some kind of message to people as they're playing. And part of the challenge I'm setting myself is to try and think about broader themes, and and work with people from various backgrounds to just explore different themes from a sheer entertainment perspective, that it doesn't have to get people to think, in the way that, say, Holding On was definitely like, we want to sucker punch you and show you that, games can evoke feelings. But there's other ways of being inclusive, but it is going to require working with different people and hearing those ideas and going, oh my God, I never would have thought of that at all. Like, that's what I
one of my new games that I just bought.
That's why I was giggling, because I saw your face and I knew, we've lost. Internet issue. But that's why I started giggling, because I saw you looking down and I knew that you had it there. So I'm like, I don't need to. This is happening by itself.
Oops, I pressed that weird button.
Okay. It was like the self-destruct one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I'm kind of really excited, I think, at this point, to work with and collaborate with a wide mix of people. Because again, like with the likes of Prism Arena, I totally realize I'm white, I'm Irish, but as a publisher, we do have certain doors open to us that I'm determined to make as much use of to bring more people into gaming.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah. If you have a power, clout, authority, whatever it is, and you can elevate other people's voices to, like, hire them, to look at their designs, to do any of that kind of stuff, do it, because it's worth it. It introduces a a whole new realm of things that people don't understand. Like people ask me all the time, why are you so hyped up about getting people who aren't like you to make games? Because I want to play cool games, and I can only think of so many things. And this is selfish. It is purely selfish. This is the games that we have now. From like 93% of them are made by white males, and that's what we have. Great. Let's see what else there is in gaming.
Yeah.
From other cultures, from other people, from other walks of life, from other people who think differently, who see the world differently. What's interesting about that? And I guarantee there's going to be stuff that is very different, right? We're seeing an influx of games from different cultures, different designers now, with Kickstarter being so easy for people to like just at least get something off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna see stuff that is just interesting, that is just different, and I think that's worthwhile.
So I'm gonna kind of bring Anjuli in. So from a war game perspective, right, and a miniatures perspective, what are you seeing that's interesting in that space?
We are seeing more women at shows, and not just wives of gamers, like actual groups of women who are coming together to look at games and to ooh and ah over the miniatures and force their ways onto the table. Also, companies, especially UK companies, are listening to women. It's amazing. I am good friends with a few UK miniature companies, and I've spoken to them about their female characters, and when they bring out new characters, they have listened to that feedback and have amended their art to better reflect women. Mm-hmm. Because I've said to them, you don't just want those old guys just buying you want women buying it. You want me to look at something and say, oh my God, that's beautiful, and it's a representation. I can put that on my table and feel like I am represented. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so good that UK companies are doing, and I wish more companies would do it. Annie does it so well, and she's only one person. If more people do the same thing, she'll be cool with that, but no one is.
Yeah.
It's okay to make miniatures of women wearing suitable armor.
Yes.
And
well, hold on a second.
I know, it's a crazy notion, but if a woman's going to go into battle, she's not wearing a chainmail bikini.
Mm-hmm.
No bikini, because I had to paint a thong on a mini the other day.
Yeah, just like
because there was nothing.
Out, like, let's go. This is how I fight in the nude.
There was nothing.
I had to paint a bodysuit onto some characters who are ninjas, and they're just showing too much skin to be practical.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I mean, there are good parts of the gaming industry. Like, it is trying to be more inclusive, and even the bigger companies are trying, and they're getting there, and they still need more and more. But there's more female sculptors now, and there's it's not great when you look at the gaming of the smaller conventions. When you look at out on the gaming tables, it is still old beardy white men.
Mm-hmm. Hire women art directors, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Get some women in there to be like, that ain't okay.
Yeah.
Like, you can still make a sexy woman. She just doesn't need to have, boobs bigger than her head and a waist that doesn't even hold her organs.
Yeah.
She can still be sexy as hell and just have more
anatomically correct.
Yeah,
exactly.
Don't make sexy women.
Exactly.
Great. We love sexy women. I like to paint sexy women. I like to look at sexy women. But they just need to be realistic.
Yep.
So
they need to be the kind of sexy lady I might see on the street.
Yeah.
So Anjuli, is it a case of like what and again, I'm maybe going to show my ignorance here. Is it to do? Are there particular systems that you think are really well designed that, again, the system appeals to more female gamers, or is it just strictly, I don't really care what the system is. I just need to see better characters.
Yeah. So like, any of the war games can have women in them, but most companies will focus on these are the men doing the fighting. The women stayed at home and cried over their lost man. But that's not true. You know, Annie's Homefront thing focuses on women who were spies and women who you know, snuck into Germany to try and rescue people. She does a lot of research on women in the war, and then creates beautiful sculpts. And she uses really great sculptors to represent them and to teach people something as well. And that's what the main thing is being able to rock up to a table and say, this is my army, they're all women, and we're here to kick your butt. Like I have a Blood Bowl team created by Exit 23 Games, and they are all women, and they are all women. They are women of color. They are women of different ethnicities, different sizes. So they're not all like these tall, skinny things. You know, they are athletic women, and I love them because, like, there's just so much representation. I can put them on the table and feel proud to be a woman presenting these to a game, because they just like it's a beautiful representation.
And it's not enough. I'll come back to what I said earlier. It's not enough to hire more women in your company or to kind of focus on that. Oh, we do have a woman. This is the token woman or the token, you know, person of color or the token whatever. It's creating an environment within that company that person feels comfortable to say, I'm not publishing this. This is not going to print. We're not doing this. We're making these decisions because of this and this. You need to create that atmosphere within your company. It's not enough to have a token person there. That's not enough.
I got in a big argument with one miniature company, the CEO, because he was like, well, you know what? A woman sculpted this. I was like, yeah, but I bet she didn't have any choice in the matter. Like, it doesn't matter that your token female sculpted this. She sculpted it because you paid her and told her she had to.
She really did a nice job.
Like, I know that she sculpts beautiful dragons, but but he was such a douche. Like he was just the worst person. He was so patronizing and just like would not listen. He was like, cheerleaders are meant to be sexy. They're not athletes. They don't need to be smart. They should be exactly as I've drawn them. They're just sexy. It's
really important. Cheerleaders are athletes. You try to do what a cheerleader does.
That chat with loads of pictures of cheerleaders, like, look at this cheerleader and this one, look at this one. Look, oh, they haven't got any breasts. Why? Because they're full of muscle. Here you go. And he got really mad at me and then banned me. But I made my point.
Yeah.
Oh, I was angry at him.
It's interesting because a lot of times, you know, making that point shows other people.
Yeah.
That
and even though he banned me, other people could read it and be like,
I think that's fair.
Yeah. And that's why we're allowed. Just not because one person or two people or five people can't necessarily make a big difference, but it's the impact of showing that there's something wrong. It's the other people who might have been blind to that particular issue who get to see,
or on the fence, who also feel the same way and don't have enough clout. Now that, you know, Corina or Anjuli said something, I'm gonna back their play. And honestly, that's what, you know, guys, if you're out there and you think the same way and a woman says something and you feel that way, don't take over the conversation, but back their play. Like say, I agree with what Corina's saying, or I agree with Anjuli. She has the right idea. Listen to her. It's this weird thing. It's a very, very weird thing. So there's studies in academia that say, you know, students are like more likely by like a couple standard deviations to believe a male professor over a female professor, no matter what their credentials are, no matter how many papers they've written, doesn't matter, because we have this socialized construct that men are in academics at that level. They are the big brains. I don't know what it is, but the same thing here. You know, use your privileges or whatever you want to call it. Use those benefits that you have, your blessings, to lift other people up. That's what you can do out there. If you're not willing to do the fighting, or if you don't have the words to do the fighting, or you think it looks bad or look weird if a guy stood up for that, when a woman does or a person of color does, back their play. That shows allyship, you know. Which, by the way, you don't get to call yourself an ally.
No, you have to earn that.
Yeah, it's an earned thing by demonstration of behavior.
So
Yeah.
I know, like, none of us are retailers, but I'm kind of wondering, how we used to with story cubes, for example. We'd always go into stores and ask them, "Do you stock story cubes?" To try and like sow the seeds in their heads that maybe they should stock that game. Is that something that we can all be doing in game stores? Is like asking for, well, what games do you have that you'd consider to be inclusive, or show that feature people with different genders or different ethnicities, or is it worth doing that, like in a shop?
I don't. There's no harm in it. I don't think
No.
by saying it. If the only thing you do is actually raise the point that maybe there isn't, and then someone needs to go look into that. Like,
I don't think there's a harm in doing that. I think you have to be genuine that you will actually buy something from them if you do ask the question.
Like, oh, no, I meant the other one.
Yeah, if you have a tight budget, maybe that's not your action.
Yeah.
But if you are willing to show through your wallet, which is that positive reinforcement of behavior for the person, they stock something you like, you buy it. If more people did that and said, I really want to show my kids a game that has all sorts of people of all sorts of walks of lives in it. Do you have anything like that? Maybe that's a good thing to do. I mean, it comes from a very legitimate place.
Well, I think if people make the argument that there's this whole catch-22, well, there isn't an audience for that, so I don't stock it, or there isn't demand.
Exactly.
That's why I'm saying if you kind of let them know that there is a demand for it, and even if they don't stock those games, they maybe start bringing them in. And I think, yes, the caveat is if they bring it in, then you need to like buy it.
Support the people who support you, right? If you've asked them to do something and they've done it, you probably should go buy it, even if it might be cheaper on Amazon or whatever.
that as well. That you do that. Like, I'm thinking of like Waterstones. People would come in and be like, "Hey, can we get like this trading card or this trading card?" And I was like, "We don't do them because I don't play those games, and as the manager, I wouldn't know what to get." But by talking to these people, I then was ordering in things, which is actually how I learned what Asmodee was. And then they would come in and they would also tell their friends, and then their friends would come in, and sooner we had clubs that would join in us to come and play, and they were teaching me how to learn how to play the games and things. And we created that little community because I was willing to take a chance and order them in and to listen to the customers' wants.
Yeah, which is really great. So for me, what would be really important is if you go to a store and you feel like your store is not necessarily the most inclusive place, be it because there's no sunlight coming in through the windows, be it because when you go in, you can't breathe properly because it might smell a bit. Now, it can be from the building. I'm not saying game or smell, but still, there are things that as a store owner, you can fix there. If there is only one bathroom and it's not ideal or welcoming, or respectively, if there are two bathrooms and one says female, one says male, that's also not ideal because we also have non-binary people who play games. If you see these tiny things, if the models when you come in indeed are, let's say you don't identify with them, if you have a bunch of minis or you have a bunch of games, ask for the change to be made. Ask for the posters to be taken off the walls. Ask for there to be, soap and toilet paper in the bathroom. Ask for those things. You are their customer. They will listen to you 100 times more than they listen to any of us because you are their audience.
But I would argue to some extent the other way is that, generally a person's just got to turn around and walk away in those circumstances. So I think the argument, and it actually came up in an event the other night where just inviting people to kind of tell you something isn't sufficient because it puts so much onus on that person who already probably isn't feeling comfortable in the first place. So I think that has to start with you as a customer, an active customer in that store, or a member of staff, or the owner in particular, and saying, like, how do I put on different lenses and like spot the issues that make my store less welcoming to other people, and invoke the help of others to do that, but at least like try and put on those different lenses and like ask online for tips for what are the checklists, because I think people have been putting together lists of like how to make a store more welcoming and inclusive. But I think I wouldn't use the excuse of no one's brought it up before.
Definitely.
As a reason.
I agree with that, and that's not an excuse. But a lot of people, if you've not thought of this before, it's likely you're not that interested in making your store more welcoming to other people than your already existing audience. So that's why I'm putting the onus on the customer. That store owner wants your money. You're a loyal customer. They want you to keep coming back. If you start mentioning this is not ideal, then they might listen to you. But I totally agree. It should come from all sides. It really is, because we're creating that environment, right? A physical store is a store you go to and you spend like a Monday night or a Friday night or whatever night or a Saturday afternoon and you have fun. That's a great place. You want to make it better. So it should also be a bit your kind of thing as a gamer, as a player, to try and make it better by saying, hi, buy some soap.
Maybe some deodorants. Just a bit of spray deodorant.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that more and more friendly local game stores are pivoting towards a service model, not a product model, because of Amazon and online ordering and Kickstarter and all those things, right? Where, they have to look at models of service now of how do I serve the people who are my customers? How do I broaden my customer base? And how will I have to serve them? And do I want that customer base at all? And that's the thing. Like if a store doesn't serve your kind, that sounds really weird and very dated. But if they don't, like if they're like, no, we don't want anything to do with an LGBTQ night at here, go find somewhere that will. Unless you happen to be in that very small town that only has one game store, which happens, I get it, and you have no other choice. Then just go find somewhere else or create your own through a meetup. Don't let other people's bigotry stop you from playing games. That's really the bottom line. Because games are so important for, like I said at the beginning, the whole human experience, right? There's such a good thing about gaming for everybody that if somebody is stopping you from doing it because of their bigotry, you're going to need to just figure out another tact to have that done, like at the public library, at your house, at a pub, right? I hear Rory doesn't like pubs.
Well, so it's funny. I actually ran a board game group for about 5-7 years, just because I was getting into games. And this was 2010, and my rule is it had to be in a public place where someone could walk in, see it, and if they felt uncomfortable, they could turn around and no one would notice. Over time, it moved to different places, and I always felt uncomfortable at the odd time where we ended up in a location that was like upstairs, because it just wasn't accessible and didn't allow for that thing. But the flip side of it was people, out of sheer curiosity, would be like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you playing?" And you say, "Oh, hey, it's this game. Come and check it out." And we
turned so many people onto RPGs by doing just that, making sure we had the biggest table in the middle of the pub reserved for us every Thursday. And just playing RPGs really loud and getting very excited. And then people would come over and be like, what is this? And then we tell them about it and they'd be like, oh my goodness. We say, you can buy it here and here and here.
Yeah.
And and just getting people excited about the thing that we were excited about, and forcing them to go and buy it.
Yeah. And I think that's in relation to, like, if the store itself isn't welcoming, we basically partnered with cafes. Who had quiet periods, and we said, are you cool if we come in here, use these tables? I guarantee we will spend money while we're here, and we'll make the place look busy. And the hardest thing was actually finding a cafe with the right tables.
Yes.
Yeah.
And lighting. Round tables and lighting as well, yeah. But generally you'll find someone who's curious about games, is interested in your group, and is more than happy to facilitate that. Like, I don't think you have to go to the game store. If like, I would never feel forced to go to a game store. I think there's always another option if they're not welcoming, and if they realize they're missing out on that audience, then they might actually start to implement some changes.
Yeah, but if you can bring it up to talk to the gaming store, talk to the staff or the owner. if you feel comfortable with doing it. If not, that's fine. Not everyone needs to be a warrior. It's better, believe me, it's way better that way. Because if we're all, we just say we don't need more of me. That's not okay. That would be really loud.
If everyone's yelling, no one can be heard.
Exactly. But realistically, if you feel comfortable with it, bring it up. They might have not seen it from that perspective. They might have just not looked at the situation from your perspective or from someone else's perspective, and they think they're doing fine, and they're not, because no one's told them that they're not doing a good job in that sense.
So I'm really conscious of time because we were about to stop at 8 o'clock. The conversation picked up again. I'm assuming you're all here of your own free will, and we're happy to kind of keep the conversation going. There's so much, like, Sen-Foong, I really want to come back to talking about like actual game design, that aspect at some point. I'd love to do that with your partner. And Anjuli, we've friends from Knights of Media, just to give them a shout out, who basically were set up to publish books targeting people of color. And they're doing an amazing job. They're a UK-based company, and they're just so busy I couldn't get them in time, but it'd be great to have them on a call together to talk about. And it comes from something that Annie had on her website, which I wanted to kind of flag with her, which is a great phrase of like, how do we create a space that's welcoming for our kind of younger 10-year-old self as well. And Knights of are doing it through their books. And I'd love to kind of have that conversation about just the media in general, like what can be done in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of us, as I say all of us, there's 4 of us at Aconyte, and we're all very happy to come on and to talk about our processes. You know, everyone else has a lot of sort of experience within the book world. Mark, who's our head publisher, he started the Black Library. He founded Angry Robots Publishing. He's he used to write. He wrote Sonic the Hedgehog Choose Your Own Adventure books, or what I used to teach my brother how to read. That was very exciting. And there's and Lottie and Nick have both worked within the Black Library as well, and they everyone enjoys coming on and talking about what we do, and we've all got very different like backgrounds and ways of doing things. And I mean, the trouble is trying to get Mark to be quiet. In a nice way, he just has a lot to say.
Yeah, we've learned the triangle thing now.
Yep, I'm going to use it in Teams tomorrow. Just be like, they'll be like, "What's that?" Like,
you just go, "I squish your head."
Oh, that's very Canadian, by the way.
Oh yeah. I introduced my daughters to that, and they love it. Yeah. Whenever we're messing around, we just go, "I squish your head."
It's very good.
And Sen-Foong, is there any opportunity, like the RPG you're working on is a great example of like, okay, that's so far outside of my wheelhouse as an idea, but it sounds amazing. Are you going to be doing any live plays of that people can kind of check out?
Yeah. Actually, I have to go in like 5 minutes to do an interview about it. But we will have live plays. We will have there is an actual play online, or will be an actual play online for the Kickstarter campaign. We would love to come talk to you about it, because I think it hits home in a lot of areas that, you're concerned about, your games deal with. Rory's story cubes in and of themselves are an inspiration in terms of storytelling and the power of storytelling, in terms of empathy, in terms of memory, in terms of just understanding the world around us through stories. And I think there's a very big part of me that my gaming origin story is literally playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it was chainmail back then, playing chainmail in the basement of the university with people who were like 4 times my age. That's my origin story, is telling stories. And so when Rory's Story Cubes came out, it's like, this is really cool. And I had never actually thought I'd write RPGs, because they took up way too much of my time. So I got rid of RPGs from my life. I actually like excised RPGs and said, no more RPGs. I got to focus on my studies. And then I got into game design, because I got into board gaming, and it was just faster than, hour-long and weeks and months and year-long campaigns. And then once a lot more of the indie games came out that were shorter, that were easier to grok at like the base level of like, I don't need to know anything. I just need to roll dice. This is awesome. That was when I got back into role-playing games and started writing them myself. So yeah, I would love to come talk to you. Banana's awesome. She would love to come talk to you. And so, yeah.
I use Rory story cubes in my D&D games.
Because that's awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Well,
when the characters can't make up their mind what they want to do, I make them grab a whole load. I've got like all of them in a big jar, and I just make them grab a load and throw it, and then they have to they have to decide, make a decision based on the things that come out.
That's excellent.
I'm gonna show
really
you the collector's box is just there up on my shelf.
Very nice, very nice.
So I was actually just quickly on that note. I have heard from people, especially female gamers, who have played Untold, and they've said, which is essentially Rory Story Cubes, the role playing game, and have said this was the experience of D&D they were looking for. Like when people pitched them the idea of a role playing game, they didn't realize there was going to be so much math involved.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
And Untold gave them that chance to just get into the story and focus on it. And because it's kind of like genre free, they can make it up about whatever they want. And so we've started kind of recommending to stores, if you want to do like an intro to role playing, you actually start with Untold as the jump off point, and then they can kind of head on to another system if they want something with a bit more kind of teeth to it.
I'm going to interject slightly because I know you said you have an interview in 3 minutes. So I want to make sure we don't make you late for the interview, and I also wanted to officially say thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No problem.
To interject, Rory. Thank you so much. It was really lovely meeting you. I'm super looking forward to you have your name on the box this year. So there's a new one that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, it's a big. From a story writing perspective, that is, just as a little anecdote before I go, it's my biggest accomplishment in the industry, to me anyways, because Warner Brothers couldn't tell that it wasn't written by them.
Wow.
They said, which episode did you get this from? Like, none, I made it up. Like,
I'm even more excited now.
Right?
Wow.
So, I mean, because it's for family level, the puzzles aren't super hard, but it's about the story. For me, it's always been about the story. Scooby-Doo has a very, very special place in my heart. It's my favorite cartoon ever. And I like a lot of cartoons. Like Rory, who follows me on Facebook, probably sees me post about animation like every day. I watch cartoons all day. But yeah, so for me, Scooby-Doo was a big, big deal. And I'm eternally grateful to my friends at USAopoly, the Op, for giving me the opportunity to work on that, because it was like a dream come true. So
Sen-Foong, do you have Rory Story Cubes Scooby-Doo? Because if not, I'm gonna have to find you a set.
I don't.
Okay.
I didn't. The funny thing is, I have a set. I don't even know where it is. It's probably in my game bag, because I carry them around with me all the time. Oh, you know what? It's at school, because I use it at school. But I don't have any of the stuff beyond like maybe the first couple basic sets, because they were enough for what I was using them for.
Yeah.
But I did see the Scooby-Doo one somewhere, so yeah. I never picked them up though. It's weird.
It is.
I'm not a big merchandise person, so I don't buy a lot of merch. But I've seen every single episode of Scooby-Doo that's ever been created, like from like way before all the way till like now. We just watched the new movie. Which is weird because I know it's like available on PlayStation and stuff like that. But I'm not the first day watcher of anything. So like I'll wait months to watch Star Wars, right? I don't know. I like it, but I don't want to be like standing in line. I hate lining up. So.
Well, I had to watch a lot of episodes for inspiration. So I think you'll appreciate the thought process that went into the icons.
Yes, I will. That's awesome.
Well.
Cool. Well, I better run because I have another interview, but I will talk to you all soon. Thanks very much for having me on. It was lovely meeting you.
Take care, Sen-Foong.
Okay.
See you later.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
And then there was
okay. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you earlier, Rory, but I saw the time and I thought it was a good moment to kind of give him a chance to say goodbye. And then I really wanted to drop that Scooby-Doo reference in there because I am so excited about that.
Such a fangirl.
I really am.
And my children are about to sit down and watch Sewing Bee, the final, which is like, I don't know if you've seen it. It's a kind of like the Bake Off, but for sewing. Yeah. So I'm going to join them and spend some quality
Sounds
time.
good.
Yay.
Sounds good.
It was a pleasure. And like Corina, this is like our last one. We're going to have to get you back on.
I'm happy to come back. You know that for a fact. I'm definitely always happy to come back. If I am free, I will be here. And yeah, thank you again for everything, Rory, and thank you for everyone. And Jos, thank you so much. But we'll figure out Facebook and stuff, so we'll stay in touch. But thank you for everyone joining us and interacting with my tweets and Facebook posts and everything in the last couple of months. It's been really, really great, and it's been really fun working and playing games and just chatting. We've done so much chatting.
Yeah.
The bulk of what we've done has been chatting, and it's been
I realized
amazing.
I'm better at this. Like, this is my better way of communicating than like writing or blogging. I just having a conversation with people.
Yeah.
So I think I'm trying to stretch that muscle a little bit. Anjuli, we got to talk minis. Like, I'm as soon as I'm finished here, I'm going to start following you.
Yes, do. Yeah.
On Twitter. I mean, on Twitter.
Not in just like, it's weird. Don't do that. Yeah, and I'm hopefully in September for Reaper Mini's online convention. I'm going to be hosting a panel of women in wargaming, in painting, talking about the same thing, inclusivity within that industry and how we can make it better and how people can go about including us in their stuff. Yeah, so that's going to be a panel in September. Hopefully that I'm going to be hosting. It'll be good fun. Good fun.
Cool.
Brilliant. And I'll just say Prismarina is coming in September, which is our kind of offer to the world in terms of inclusivity as well. And amazing gameplay. Like, that's, you can't have one without the other.
Yay.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was so nice to hang out with you.
Bye.
Make that a
Bye.
Bye.